Okay, I'm just setting up, and I'll I'll get started. Just give people time to jump into the room before I get going. For those of you who are wondering what's going on, I'm just I've pretty much finished. I'm ready to go, and we will get started. I'll say right now, for those of you who might need to leave part way through, I suspect this particular live stream will take between 15 and 20 minutes, more 20 minutes rather than 15. For those of you who don't know, I will be live streaming my home game tonight. It's going to be taking place 7:30 p.m. through to 11 p.m. That's New Zealand Standard Time. That is today, which is Friday in New Zealand, and it's probably Thursday in other countries. But yes, today 7:30 p.m. through to 11 p.m. I will be running a live stream event. I will be DMing. I won't be playing the game, and it will be on Twitch TV, and you can find that under the name Frederick Wheeler 129. That is FrederickWheeler 129, and yes, we have Storm King's Thunder playing. So for those of you who are interested, we will be doing that in a few hours. Okay, so welcome to everybody who's here. We will get started. It is now 3 o'clock, and I've got a little bit of information to pass on to you, so we need to get cracking. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about how to play Dungeons & Dragons 5e or D&D 5e, and we are focusing on the Warlock and the basics for the Warlock. This is number 4, and today is about the Pact Boons. Now, I will be using the Warlock pre-made character sheet that you can find on the official Dungeons & Dragons website. There's like 10 different versions of this thing, and you are welcome to go and download that particular character sheet and check it out, because if I am using any numbers or stats, it will be from that particular area, from those pre-made character sheets that Wizards of the Coast have online. If you want more information and specifics about Pact Boons, then if you have a look on page 107 through to 108 of the Player's Handbook, there are details on how the Pact Boons work for the Warlock. So at level 3, the Warlock is going to get access to 3 possible Pact Boons. And these Pact Boons consist of basically an otherworldly patron bestowing a great gift upon that particular Warlock for their loyal service. You can gain one of the following features. Now, this can either be Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, or Pact of the Tome. I'm going to go through each one individually, and we're going to break them all down so that you guys can, see how they work. So we'll start off with Pact of the Chain. One of those pacts that as it happens, is a little bit unusual because essentially you're getting access to Find Familiar. So you can learn and cast Find Familiar as a ritual, which is going to take you 10 minutes. It doesn't use up a spell slot, and it's there. One of the only drawbacks to this is if you have to continue doing the ritual and you need the material components, which comes to a total cost of about 10 gold pieces. Or you can't buy the charcoal that you require to actually perform the ritual, so you can create Find Familiar. Find Familiar is one of those spells that a lot of people really want. One, because it's like having your own animal companion that only has like 1 hit point, or very, very few hit points. But it's not so much the combat aspect of having a familiar that's important. I know a lot of people are focused on that. You could do it. You can try to deliver spells through a familiar. That is possible. But the big aspect to the Find Familiar ritual, and the fact that you get it through Pact of the Chain, is you get access to all of the normal familiars that are available in the Find Familiar spell. So things like the owl, the rat, the spider, the raven, the hawk, the cat. You can have a weasel or a lizard, a frog, a toad. You can have a bat. These are all fine. But I'm not even going to go anywhere near the water-based ones. I'm not sure why you would even want to have a familiar that is water-based, because the chances are you're not going to have an adventure that's in water. So unless you breathe water or your adventure takes place in water, I'm not going into them. But you get access to these additional familiars, and that is the imp, the pseudo-dragon, the quasette, and the sprite. Now the sprite can be invisible and has quite a few features that make it very helpful. Quasette, it's all right. It's the imp. Really, the imp is the one familiar that everybody wants to try and pick up, and it's because of its versatility. The simple fact is that an imp can polymorph itself into a variety of things which are stated in the actual stat block for the imp, and it doesn't stipulate that it's a concentration ability. So you can just do it, and then you can layer on top of that, once you've changed your form, maybe a spider or something that flies, you're now invisible. So as long as you don't make any attacks or cast any spells, then you are fine. And it doesn't state that polymorph is a spell. It is certainly a spell-like sort of effect that the imp is using, but hey, you can utilize that to great advantage. It makes the imp one of the great infiltrators for any adventure that you are playing in. Additionally, as an attack action, you can forego having 1 attack to allow your familiar to make 1 attack as a reaction. Personally, it's a really bad idea to have your familiar in combat and trying to make attacks. So I would not recommend focusing on that part of the Pact of the Chain. Don't use your familiar as a combat feature. If you're going to do something like that, then the help action with Find Familiar, an owl has flyby, so you don't provoke. Yes, sprites can be very useful. The great aspect to the Find Familiar is the utility. It's not the combat, it's the ability to scout. It's the ability to find out where traps are, to map out a location before your party go anywhere. You can see through the eyes of this particular familiar. You can actually draw out and scope out the location before you go in. So you find out a place you can hold up, you sit there, you make sure your party look after you, cover your back because you won't be able to see and hear anything. You'll be seeing and hearing everything through your imp. As long as you're not too far away and the range is pretty far, you should be able to lay out the entire dungeon area. It's probably one of the more frustrating aspects to the Pact of the Chain for a Warlock that Dungeon Masters will come across, simply because suddenly they are just drawing out the location for the players. Unless, of course, they're quite cruel and they decide to have something fall on the familiar and it perishes. So that is the Pact of the Chain. A really good pact to pick up. Don't think, okay, yeah, but it's not giving me combat aspects. If you know where things are, you can prepare a lot better than if you are trying to just figure things out, explore as you go. So having a little infiltrator is a really good thing to have. The next one I want to talk about is the Pact of the Blade. Often one of those pacts that people really like simply because of the scary nature of it, really. This is going to essentially allow you to create a magical melee weapon as an action that you are proficient with. So even if you weren't proficient with that particular type of weapon, as soon as you create it or it becomes your Pact Blade, then you are now proficient. It is magical, so it can get through resistance, immunity. It's a melee weapon, so it can't be ranged. It must be a melee weapon. And I suppose you could essentially decide to try to transform a broomstick or a broom into a magical weapon if you really wanted, but it's a little bit weird. I don't think it'll last too long in combat. You can transform another magical weapon that you find into your pact weapon as a ritual, and that is one of the really important aspects of Pact of the Blade. So when you get to use a magic weapon, now you make magic weapons yourself anyway, your Pact Blade is a magic weapon, so that's not the biggest feature, but the simple fact is if there are other elements to that magical weapon other than just making it magical to get past resistance and immunities, you can now use it because you are not only proficient as soon as it becomes your pact weapon, it only requires a ritual to do it. You're only going to have to spend a little bit of time to make that happen. And you have essentially created yourself the ability to pick up any magic weapon you like. Sounds fantastic. What's even better is you can shuffle this thing. Now the ritual, normally rituals are about 10 minutes. This particular ritual to perform on a magic weapon takes 1 hour. So it's a little bit longer, but you know, that's all right, that's fine. You can shuffle it into an extra dimensional space, so you can shunt it away. That means no more losing that magic weapon or it being destroyed or taken from you, because you can just hide it away and nobody can get to it. It also follows, if you have a look at how the whole section is laid out for the Pact of the Blade, that you're absolutely going to need a high strength for the Pact of the Blade boon. If you don't have it, it's going to be really hard to hit a target and to do damage. So just remember, you need to have a decent strength, unless of course you're only going to focus on something like a finesse weapon, which really does restrict your options, and I wouldn't do that to yourself. I think if you're going to do this and you're going to go Pact of the Blade, go with something like strength so that you can pick up pretty much anything you want and use it, because that's essentially what Pact of the Blade will do. It also follows that even if you don't find a magical weapon, or you decide you're going to create a magical weapon from just thin air, which is essentially what you can do, you could also take a weapon that's a mundane, non-magical weapon and make that your Pact Blade. There's no reason why you can't do this. You do need to have high charisma if you're going to play any kind of Warlock. And I see there's a few people talking about Hexblade. Yes, it's one of those things. You still need a high charisma, but you need to also focus either on strength or dexterity, although strength would be the best choice, so you can broaden the number of weapons that you can utilize, because essentially right now with Pact of the Blade you can be proficient with any weapon you like whatsoever. So that is Pact of the Blade. One of my favorites is the last one, which is the Pact of the Tome. The Pact of the Tome seems a little underpowered to a lot of people, but in fact it's not, and I'll explain to you why. You get a book of shadows that you can essentially replace. If you lose it, if it gets lost, if it gets destroyed, it's going to take you an hour to perform a ceremony to replace it, get another one from your patron, which is awesome. The great thing about it is it suddenly allows you to pick up additional cantrips. You only had 2 cantrips before, so why would you take Pact of the Tome? Utility. Really, I would say that utility is going to be better than damage dealing when it comes to Pact of the Tome. It's going to give your Warlock the ability to cast spells that are cantrips infinitely, at will, all the time, on top of the you only get 2, and one of them is going to be Eldritch Blast. You now have 5 cantrips, and you are essentially only level 3, and that's pretty good. In fact, it's pretty hard to get that many with a class and the right race as it is. So what sort of cantrips would you want to pick up if you're going to be using something like Pact of the Tome and you have that Book of Shadows with you? You must have the Book of Shadows on you. If you don't have it on you, you can't cast those 3 cantrips that you select. So cantrips that I would suggest are really good for you to pick up are things like Mage Hand, Minor Illusion, Prestidigitation, Mending, Guidance, Shocking Grasp. All of the cantrips that you select for your Book of Shadows can be from any spell list. From any cantrip spell list. It doesn't have to be the Warlock list. It could be any of them. It could be the Bard, it could be the Cleric. It's up to you. It could be the Wizard. You can pick and choose as you go. So you could even pick up cantrips like Spare the Dying if you feel that your Healer's Kit isn't going to do the trick. Or pick up Spare the Dying and then take a feat later on so that you can turn that Spare the Dying spell into a much more powerful spell with the Healer's feat. And then suddenly you can get people back on their feet and you are a Warlock. Often at higher levels, the best thing you can do is just give people 1 hit point and they get back in the battle, simply because they've got so many hit points already as their maximum that getting instantly killed is almost impossible. So that is the gist of the Pact Boon. There are 3 of them. They are pretty good. I would say the ones that people like the most is Pact of the Blade. I've seen Pact of the Chain used, but mostly Pact of the Tomb and Pact of the Blade. I've seen the most of those. You just need to know how to use them and how to build your Warlock around them, rather than just going willy-nilly and deciding I'll pluck a little bit here and pluck a little bit there and then throw it together. Now, if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. If you're not already subscribed and you like this sort of content, then hey, why not subscribe now? There is a bell button. There's like a little bell button down the bottom there that you can click just beside the subscribe button, and that'll give you occasional notifications, which basically you're going to get email every once in a while when I put out a new video. I put out videos every single day. As anybody who's been on my channel knows, I live stream pretty much every single day, and if I don't live stream, there's usually a pre-made video that I release at some point. And this is how I run my channel. Now, if you are wanting to ask questions, then I want you to stick around in the live chat and start asking those questions. I will get to those questions as you post them now. If you are not part of the live stream, then you can just post your questions down below in the comments section. If you have something you want to add, you feel like I have missed something out, then you can put that down in the comments or bring it up during the live stream. That's fine too. Additionally, if you want to really support my channel, then watching more of my videos is probably one of the best ways to support my channel. Watching my videos will help me a lot. I get a small bit of ad revenue from AdSense and YouTube. Also too, it helps me confirm that I'm actually doing what I should be doing on YouTube, and which is to try and help people learn how to play the game. And this is what these videos are all about. I don't do Patreon, but if you want to support my channel by paying money, then I don't really want you to pay me money. I have an affiliate link down in the description. You click on the link, I get a small commission for anything you buy from that link, and you pay exactly the same price, and you don't even have to buy the thing I've linked to. You just got to go through the link and then buy something else. And that is going to be it. And I want to say my final farewell. Those of you in the live chat, don't run away. Till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And where is the big 20? The big 20 is right here. Okay. Okay, all right, it is time to have a chat with people. Let's see what we've got here. Somebody has got here, I can't pronounce your name, but I'll do my best. I want to create a warlock that rides a broomstick and has a small animal companion. Item thoughts. Okay, so first of all, if you want to ride a broomstick, you're going to need a flying broomstick. That's a magical item. So you're going to have to find that. I don't think you can create a Warlock straight off the bat that can fly a broomstick. You'd have to have a pretty lenient and kind dungeon master, or maybe just even a dungeon master who's not really thinking clearly about suddenly giving one of their players at low level the ability to fly. So it's probably not going to be likely. A small animal companion, well, my suggestion to you is go with just a fine familiar. So make sure you pick up Pact of the Chain. Pact of the Chain will allow you to have access to a whole bunch of different familiars. And I've already gone through them, such as the Imp, Quasette, the Sprite, the Pseudo Dragon, and all the other ones that are available under the Find Familiar spell. Although when you use Find Familiar with your Pact of Chains, it is not going to be cast as a normal spell. It'll be cast as a ritual. So 10 minutes, make sure you got a bit of time to do that. Sprites, yeah, there's nothing wrong with sprites. They can also be invisible. The sprite that's available for the players to use is not as powerful as the sprite in the Dungeon Masters, not the Dungeon Masters, in the Monster Manual. The Monster Manual sprite allows, well, no, it's about the same. I'm talking about the Pixie. I'm getting the Pixie and the sprite mixed up. There's nothing wrong with a sprite. It flies, it can be invisible, it can get pretty much anywhere it wants to go. You don't have to necessarily pick up something like an Imp. Okay, Lewis, what have you got here? Or a high charisma if you're a Hexblade. Look, whether you're playing a Hexblade or a Warlock of any kind, really your top ability score is definitely got to be charisma, and I would recommend trying to get a 16 in there as soon as you can, like at level 1. What's this? Kilrathi. Kilrathi. Oh, I like the name. I missed it. Well, you haven't missed it. It will get posted up, Kilrathi, in about half an hour to an hour by YouTube once I finish the live stream. So, and you're welcome to ask questions about anything that we've talked about. We've been talking about the Pact of the Chain, the Pact of the Blade, and the Pact of the Tome. And if you want to ask any questions or want to offer some advice to other people, this is a good time to sort of do it. You know, we are finished, but we're not gone yet. I usually leave a bit of time for people to ask questions because I feel like we're on YouTube and we need to get a bit of interaction. I noticed that the interaction via live stream has increased substantially and the interaction in the comments has decreased. Now that might sound like a bad thing, but I honestly think it's actually a good thing. It's also meant that I don't have to worry about pre-recording everything. And honestly, I find myself able to speak to you guys live stream much easier than trying to pre-record, and talking to myself in a room really doesn't help sometimes. It's actually more difficult to talk when there's nobody else around than when you're talking to somebody else. Even though I can't see you, I know you guys are there, and that sort of helps quite a lot. All right, Corey, you've got here, so you said a strength-based melee weapon was better than a finesse. Why again? Okay, thanks. All right, so Corey, let's talk about that. The reason being is there are more strength-based melee weapons that you could access than there are finesse weapons. And although dexterity will certainly help your armor class, you might find that it doesn't matter. If you pick up something like multi-classing a Warlock is quite a common thing. So trying to pick up a proficiency in armor rather than having to worry about having a high dexterity or having a dexterity modifier at all, or why would you bother if you're wearing armor? Most of the armor, almost more than half the armor options are going to eliminate your dexterity modifier, the ones that are worth taking. So there are more options for the strength-based. Can you imagine what happens if you have a Warlock and you're wielding a pole arm, something that's got a 2d6 or a d12 or even a d10 doing damage with that? Obviously you're going to try to aim for picking up a weapon that can do a truckload of damage. Which is the 2d6, sorry, 2 6-sided dice or a 12-sided dice. Why would you go with a finesse weapon? It doesn't make sense. unless you are trying to go 2-weapon fighting and you've decided you want to go with having more than one Pact blade, which I'm not sure that the Pact of the Blade actually allows you to do. My understanding is that you can actually only have one, and if you try to cast it again or create another one, the first one disappears. So you wouldn't be able to dual wield with Pact weapons just because of how the Warlock is designed and the Pact of the Blade is structured. So yeah, unless you really want to go finesse, and that's the reason, is the ability to pick up the heavy hitting weapons with the higher dice. All right, Karathi, I thought the stream was already over. No, we're still here. I will answer your questions. Okay, Lewis, what do we got here? How long have you been role-playing, Fred? Okay, so I started tabletop wargaming, which was way back. I can't even remember. I think I'd come out of university, and it was been a couple of years, and I was getting sort of a little bit down, and I'd gotten involved in the martial arts for years, and then that sort of folded, and I found myself in a situation where I couldn't do martial arts because I was getting a little bit broken up. So I decided to go to tabletop wargaming, and yeah, I would say it's maybe 10 years now. Before that it was tabletop wargaming, and then before that I was doing a lot of martial arts, and really I didn't really play a lot of games that involved board games. I mean, I did so when I was at school. You know, when I was a lot younger, we would play card games, board games, a lot of chess, things like that. I remember at school people talking about Dungeons and Dragons and the funny dice, and I just thought it was a silly game and I didn't really want to know about it. So it took me a little while to pick it up. I did buy the books when I was in university, and that was probably about 20 years ago. But I never actually used them much. I just liked the pictures and the monsters in them. That's sort of how I approach things. So hopefully that answered your question, Lewis. I'll get back to your questions. I don't want to lose anybody on this. So just a reminder to people that I am live streaming our home games. That's live play. I am dungeon mastering. We'll be playing at 7:30 through to 11 PM New Zealand Standard Time. Okay, that's New Zealand Standard Time. That's tonight. Friday for me, maybe Thursday for you. And we are going to be playing on Twitch TV, and it will be under the channel name Frederick Wheeler 129. So that's all lowercase, FREDRICKWHEELER 129. And yes, don't bring your kids along. It probably won't be suitable for kids. I would suggest you leave the kids somewhere. They should be at bed. You know, 7:30 they should be in bed, right? That's how it should work. Okay, Karathi, do you have another channel, or did you change the channel's name? I changed the channel's name. What I did when I initially made How to D&D is I did it all in lowercase. I put no spaces, and the reason for that is I figured that's often how people would punch it into the search engine for YouTube. I decided that actually what I needed to do is start moving the channel towards a bit more of a professional look and try to tidy things up, which is why I'm trying to live stream, which is why I'm trying to understand how to use OBS. And hence what I've done is I've tried to match the name of my YouTube channel with the Facebook group that I'm building, and eventually the Twitch TV channel that's called Frederick Wheeler 129. When I'm allowed to, I need a bit more time to pass, I will change that, and it will be called How to D&D as well. So there was a change in names, if you were wondering. I know your voice, but I don't recognize the channel name. Yeah, that's essentially because I did make some slight alterations. The how is now got a capital H, I put a space, 2, and then the D and D is just 2 capitals rather than the lowercase. All right, Kilrathi, are we talking errata content? Okay, so first of all, errata content, I've got the errata in front of me because this isn't the first printing. So if you're wanting to know, is there any changes in terms of the errata content for the Warlock, my understanding is this is correct. If I am wrong, I certainly will apologize, and I can post that additional information if you like in the comment section and into the description as well, just in case. And if there are any major errors, because I have checked to make sure that I got things correct, then I will do another video. I'll do another video to replace this one, essentially, just to make sure you're getting the right information. Okay, next, Lewis. You can't have more than one Pact Blade, yes, but Shadow Blade spell is a reasonable choice for dual wielding. I saw it on a Hex Blade guide. Yeah, so unless you are utilizing some of the newer options, I don't know an awful lot about the Hex Blade at this present time, which is why this is just the Warlock basics. But I do know that you can only have one Pact Blade at a time. I have had a few players who asked me, look, can I have two Pact Blades at the same time because I want to dual wield? And we had a good close look at the rules as written in there and the intention behind it, and no, you can't, unfortunately, unless you start looking at some other options. And the Shadow Blade spell might certainly be one of those options that you could pick up and change the way that you do your dual wielding. There are also a few invocations that do change sort of how things work. So something like the Life Drinker, which is a prerequisite. You need to be at least level 12 as a Warlock. You need to also be have the Pact of the Blade feature. So when you hit a creature with your Pact Blade, the creature takes extra necrotic damage equal to your Charisma modifier, and the minimum can be a 1. So a really useful feature if you're wanting to take Pact Blade. Also Thirsting Blade, which is available for the Pact Blade feature as well. You need to have that feature, and it's available at level 5. You can attack with your Pact weapon twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. So essentially you don't need to necessarily dual wield. You could just pick up that invocation, Thirsting Blade, and you get to make 2 attacks instead of 1 attack. And you do it with the same hand, with your main hand. So if you wanted to get 2 attacks in, that's the way to probably do it. Alright, looking at the questions here. And I believe the Hex Blade guide you'll find in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. You can pick that up from Amazon, probably the book depository, if you're not in North America, because, you know, free shipping from the book depository, that's pretty good. Okay, Corey, your recommendations for first and second level spells, or which ones do you see used most in my game, in your games? Thanks. Okay, Corey, fair enough. Let us have a quick look at the spells that I would pick up. First off, it's pretty much a no-brainer. There aren't too many spells that a Warlock needs to be picking up to be useful at level 1 and 2. The most obvious spells are the ones that you probably already know about, and you're going to be picking up something like, at level 1, you're going to be picking up something like Hex, would be your first port of call for level 1. And then Hellish Rebuke. So Hex gives you more damage, so whatever you're utilizing or targeting, and you, as a bonus action, you can move it to another target. So it's one of those spells, you know, the spell, the battle's going to be taking a bit of time. You put out Hex, and then you can just shift the increased damage from one target to the next as they go down. Hellish Rebuke means when somebody attacks you, they take, as a reaction, fire damage. Really useful. Those are probably the key ones that I've seen. Armor of Agathis, which I was supposed to do a spell video on, is actually pretty good too. I've seen that used a little bit. And also I've seen Witch Bolt used quite a few times. A pretty helpful spell. There are other options that you can pick up. I've seen people sort of try to pick up other spells at level 1 and utilize them in a particular way. I think I've even seen somebody try to pick up something like Comprehend Languages, then dump it later on and take the invocation that allows them to simply read all scripts. The second level spells that I highly recommend are things that like Misty Step to get you out of trouble. Invisibility is a no-brainer. The other ones are Crown of Madness. I've been surprised. There's been a lot of talk about Crown of Madness being sort of limited in its use. Surprisingly, the effect is pretty substantial. Ray of Enfeeblement is really good for something like a caster, somebody who uses intelligence and enfeebling them will affect their spell casting. Hold Person, a really good spell, pretty good for level 2. Lewis, you are correct, it's an awesome option. So those are generally the ones that I see people using. I have occasionally seen people pick up Mirror Image, but Misty Step, Invisibility, Hold Person, Ray of Enfeeblement, Crown of Madness, those are ones that people tend to use if they are a Warlock. If you're wanting to talk about something like level 3 spells for a Warlock, it's Fly, it's Dispel Magic. Certainly Counterspell should probably be your first port of call, simply because Counterspell is so powerful. And the rest of them, really it's up to you. You know, you decide sort of, are you looking more for utility, are you looking more for defense, or are you looking more to just deal. I mean, a lot of the spells that are available at level 3 for a Warlock are more of a nullifying nature. You know, they're either utility or nullifying in some way. Okay, so that's Corey's question answered, I think. Okay, what do we got here? Smash Bro 99. Oh, welcome back, Smash Bro 99. What's your favourite patron path from the player's handbook? You know, I don't know that I have a favourite. I haven't actually played a Warlock, mostly because I just don't get an option to play very often. It's usually one of those things where I see other people playing the class and they'll pick up certain things and they'll explain to me why they prefer those options over something else. So I don't actually have a preferred patron. I think that there are definitely benefits for all of them. It's really what you want. I mean, what sort of abilities do you want? What sort of background do you want? I think the Archfey is a pretty cool option. It's certainly more around enchantment, illusion and things like that. But you know, there's no reason why you can't take some of the other options if you're not interested in that sort of thing. You know, the Fiend, they're really about sort of dishing it out. They're all about fire. Really, most of the stuff around them is about fire, and they've got some really powerful abilities. I don't want to talk too much about them, simply because there just isn't time. There's so much there. I've seen the Fiend and the Old One used the most. The Archfey I've seen the least. So the Fiend and the Great Old One is probably the most popular patrons that I've seen players pick up in the past. Okay, what do we got here? Kilrathi, gotta go. I'll check out the video later. Have a great night. Yep, I'll see you later, man. Smash Bro 99, I hear that. I'm almost always DM2. No worries, haha. Look, you know, you can play a Warlock even as a Dungeon Master. Use it as one of your NPCs or villains, you know. Utilize their patron and the Warlock as one of the main enemies or villains for your campaign or your story. So then you can play a Warlock. You can build it, put it together, and it will run pretty much like any other monster. It'll just have, you know, player character power. I mean, the simple fact is that the player character builds are usually always going to be more powerful and stronger than most monsters, other than something like a legendary creature of some kind, or legendary beasts and monsters. Are there any more questions, anything else that anybody wants to say before I turtle off? And I really am glad that people have hopefully found this a useful video. It seems to have been reasonably successful. I did manage to actually promote it a little bit this time. I didn't sort of like to suddenly jump on. I had a little bit of time to prep, and I'm here. So yeah, if there aren't any more questions, I think it's probably a good time to finish up. For those of you who are wondering with my little layout, my little map here, I'm trying to sort of represent the 3 possible patrons, like the Fiend, the Old One, the Great Old One, and this I'm just going to call this a Fey. I don't know what this is. It's like a Night Walker. It's some sort of weird creature. I've never actually used it before, And I think for my little, this is supposed to represent the Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Tome. I love this miniature, it's one of my favourites. And this miniature here is actually custom made by my brother. It's actually a Star Wars character that has been painted, and she's got a little pseudo dragon to help her out. Okay, I think that is it. There are no more questions. You guys all have a great time, whether that's sleep or going and getting on with your day, work, life, family, all those sorts of things. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you next time, which should be tomorrow, which should be a longer stream because it's a Saturday for me, so I can spend a bit longer with you guys. I'll see you later.